Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at something completely new, something completely different than what I normally would do, and that is the Werewolf Lord. Now this is a build that it's going to be pretty easy to notice its gameplay. It's going to be pretty easy to notice what it is and how it works, but it also has a lot of flexibility. And remember, every time I create a build and I show you guys these different options, there's always something included, and that is flexibility. So let's take a look at the build of the Werewolf Lord. Now, before I go any further, I am going to tell you this. The armor appearance that I'm using is the Ancestral Nord. So from everything I'm wearing is Ancestral Nord, including the weapons, the shield. It's all the skins for that. And the color scheme I use is the it's in this order. So from left to right, it's the Cyrodiilic Still, the Lycanthropy Gray, and Master Motive Brown. Or it could be, because I don't remember if I changed or not. It could be Cyrodiilic Steel, Master Motive Brown, and the Lycanthropy Gray. But it plays into this. So, Werewolf Lord, Dragonknight. That's an interesting choice. But we are a Nord Dragonknight for this build. It works out really well, and it gets a lot of interesting tools for it that make it really powerful for the way it works. So as you can see, we have 64 points in our stamina, we have 18k magicka, 26k health, 29k max stamina. We do have 811 health recovery, 557 magic recovery, and 557 stam recovery. Our weapon damage and spell damage is coming in pretty decent levels, 2,000 weapon damage, well, 2,100 weapon damage, 1,500 spell damage. We do have a 38% weapon crit and a 29% spell crit. Resistances are coming in at 26k spell and physical. We are a Nord, and we are using the Thief Mundus Stone. Now, why the Thief Mundus Stone? To increase our critical chances with our abilities. Not just our human form, but our werewolf form as well. We also have lycanthropy, and as you can see here, you take 25% more poison damage while transformed into a werewolf. That's kind of the downside of being a werewolf. We do have increased experience for an hour. I tried to turn this off, but I accidentally clicked one of the scrolls, and tri-stat food. But so don't take the experience thing into true nature here. This is just here. Alright, moving on. So food wise, really, now this is something that I've added to the build options. So when it comes to food, depending on the role you're playing, braised rabbits with spring vegetables is really good if you're playing stamina DPS. Tri-stat pots is really good if you're playing a tank or a healer. And then the dubious Cameron Throne you can also use when you're playing a stam DPS, because it will give you more stam recovery in the build, and it allows for that resource return. It's really kind of nice. Then we also have the warrior power pots, or stamina power pots is what they're called on the live server, and they give you stamina return, they give you major endurance, increasing stam recovery, they give you major brutality and major weapon damage. Use that when you're playing DPS. Stamina. And then of course down here we do have tri-stat food, and I'm pretty sure that is it. So the idea of this build is, again, you can see in its stats and its premise that it's meant to be a frontline warrior or soldier, but it does have a unique curse, and we'll get to that in a second. Going over the sets, starting with our monster set, we are using Grunwolf's Mask. Now, I tried several different monster sets with this build. And Grundwolf just seems to fit really well into the criteria of how you want this build to work, because you want resources. So this one, whenever you deal critical damage, you restore 700 magic or stamina, whichever is higher. In this case, you're going to get stamina back, but you're also going to get 350 of the other, of magicka back. So, and that effect can occur once every 5 seconds. It's a really nice way to keep your resources flowing, even in werewolf form. Now the next set. And a lot of tanks I use this set on, but a lot of times I use this set for a different reason. In the case of the werewolf, this plays really well into it. And that is Gladiator's Cuirass. So 2 things of crit on the 2 and 3 piece, 4 piece weapon damage, 5 piece. You gain 1475 weapon damage against targets who are below 25% health. Now, I didn't realize this earlier, because this only used to apply to light attacks. But now it's your weapon damage against targets who are below 25% health. And so this applies to everything you do, not just light and heavy attacks. This applies to your werewolf attacks. This applies to all that stuff. So this just changed, and I just went, click, perfect set for this. I love it. And I tested it with this. I tested it with Hunting's Rage. I did test it with the Advancing Yodokai as well. But this set excelled above them. It is super powerful. Moving on to the next set. And this is one that's a given if you're going to play this build as a tank primarily, but you can still use it for other things. The Tormentor Set. This set is awesome now. Super awesome. 2 piece max health, 3 and 4 piece healing taken, and then the 5 piece. When you deal direct damage with a charge, a leap, a teleport, a pull ability, you gain 3,642 spell and physical resistance, and taunt the enemy to attack you for 15 seconds. So basically, it's a built-in taunt to the set for charging, leaping, teleporting, or pulling. So that means even if you use Silver Leash, or you're playing a sorcerer and you use your ball lightning to teleport, or you play a Nightblade and you use the ambush strike, or the teleport strike, whichever one, or Fan of Blades, you get the ability to taunt the enemy. If you're playing a Dragonknight and you use the Dragon Leap, taunt the enemy. If you use a charge ability from the weapons, you get taunt. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this set, but for the werewolf and its feral leap, holy crap, it is awesome. So, we've been waiting for this, and you can hear it in my voice. A lot of us have been waiting for this. Now, I have held off on releasing this for a reason, and I'll get to that in the end of the video, but let's go ahead and talk a lot about traits and enchants. And to clarify, traits and enchants that I choose is to maximize the character's potential. Not everyone's going to have access or have the resources to do what this build shows. So please understand, this is a long-term thing that you're going to build towards. There are other tools you can use in place of what I use. So starting with the monster set, we have a tri-stat invigorating helm with the Grundwolf, but it's the tri-stats. So you get all 3 attributes: health, magic, stamina, and then of course you get that invigorating, which increases, and depending on the situation, magic recovery, stam recovery, and health recovery. It depends on what kind of way you're using the character. It really plays out well. The body piece, we are using tri-stat as well, reinforced. Now, the reason for reinforced, you want this piece to give you the most amount of resistances out of all the other resistance or armor pieces you have. So it just allows that perfect kind of balance. And I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's good balance in how it works. Then on the legs, invigorating, and of course, again, tri-stat. Now, The helm itself is medium armor, the other two pieces are heavy, and then moving on to the small pieces, starting with the shoulder, the gloves, and the boots, they are all heavy pieces, max health, sturdy traits. Now, if you notice I didn't mention the belt yet, the belt is your only light piece of armor, also sturdy and max health. As you can see, it gives really low armor value. Even in heavy armor, it's a really low armor value. But it's better to have this in light and your helm in medium. Now, if you were going to do this in a more effective way, using a heavy helm and medium gloves is a better option. But the amount of resistance difference is so minuscule between the gloves and the helm in the way they're set up that it's just not worth it. It's easier to set up a medium helm, light belt, and then the rest heavy. This actually gives you the most resistances you can get in a heavy armor build using a 5-1-1 setup. That means 5 pieces of heavy, 1 light, 1 medium. Alright, so max health smaller pieces, tri-stats on the big pieces. Pretty easy to understand. Alright, moving on now to the jewelry. And this, you don't have to use this if you don't want to. If you don't have the ability to tri-rune this stuff or change this stuff, or you don't want to use those charges, because using transmutation charges is expensive, and they are very challenging to get for some people, you don't have to. But I will say this, the build definitely does work better with it. So you can use the all healthy that it comes with normally. But 2 tri-rune weapon damage works out really well. Even healthy weapon damage works out really well. And then of course on the necklace we are using infused health recovery. And you can use healthy health recovery here as well. I would suggest if you're going to do that though, and you're going to use all healthy, go with 2 health recovery, 1 weapon damage. You are going to drop your weapon damage down some, but it's kind of the sacrifice you have to make to compensate for what you're doing. Now moving on to the weapons. On the weapons we are using a Nirnhoned axe with an absorbed stamina, and the Nirnhoned axe is just going to increase the damage that you do both with magic and stamina to a higher amount. Now if you look at the damage of this, it does 1535 Nirnhoned. With your two-handed axe you do 1571, and it's not Nirnhoned. This is going to give you a balance between the two, so when you swap bars you still get that good mix of weapon and spell damage from both of them. And then of course on the shield we are using tri-stat with sturdy. Now onto the axe. Now this again is really up to the player what they want to use. I chose to use a Crusher enchant. This reduces the target's physical and spell resistance by 2108 for 5 seconds. It's also infused. It increases your weapon enhancement effect by 30% and reduces the enhancement cooldown by 50%. The normal cooldown on an enhancement is 5 seconds after activation. So in this case, you remove that 5 seconds, so this thing can literally reactivate, or it has a 3-second cooldown afterwards. So you can just basically remove the cooldown. So it'll stay procced constantly with certain abilities. And this is the weapon you use when you transform into a werewolf. This is what your stuff looks like. You do lose a little bit of weapon damage, but don't stress it. Alright, now that I've shown you that, let's go ahead and move on to skills. And in the skills themselves, this is what you use when you play normal. So when you're playing in normal mode, you're not a werewolf, you're going to use these particular skills on the bars and vice versa. Now, I will say this. I was doing some testing yesterday, and I'm going to move some things around here. Igneous Shield is going to be the better option on the front bar here. Not because it gives you a smaller shield, but because of the fact that it gives you a shield that also gives you ultimate when it's here. So there's a reason for it. All right. So being a Dragonknight, one of the things I do want to point out is Battle Rage or Battle Roar. So when you cast an ultimate ability, you restore health, magic, and stamina. Um, so much of it for each point of ultimate cost. And then you also have Mountain's Blessing. And this one grants minor brutality to your allies whenever you activate an Earth and Heart ability. And it also gives you 3 ultimate. And that's when you're in combat. So if you're in combat, you also generate 3 ultimate. This effect can occur every 6 seconds. You have to be in combat for you to get that. This is a great way to build ultimate towards your werewolf form. Now, I do not use Heroic Slash for this build for a reason. I understand a lot of people will say Heroic Slash would be a better option. You're right and you're wrong at the same time. It can be a better option, but it lacks the power that this thing has. So, just gonna say that. First off, Ransack. This is a great ability. It gives you a physical damage on the action. It does taunt the enemy for 15 seconds. It also grants you Major Fracture and Major Breach, reducing both spell and physical resistance on the enemy for 15 seconds. This is really good, not only for you, but your group, but you're not going to be using this as much, because you get Major Fracture in your werewolf form. Next up, we do have Venomous Claw. Really great ability, does damage up front, damage over 14 seconds, and it also, the damage scales more, gets more increased the longer it lasts, and increases 20% more damage every 2 seconds, so it's actually quite nice. And then we have our next ability, which is Deep Slash. Now, a lot of people are going to say, why are you using Deep Slash? It's such a useless thing. The reason for Deep Slash over Heroic Slash is Deep Slash applies Minor Maim to a group of targets, not one. Now, it is nice for the ultimate gen when you use Heroic Slash. It is very nice. But if you're trying to get Minor Maim on multiple targets so you can keep the incoming damage down, this is a much better way to do it. That's just my opinion, so you can choose how you want. I also like the reduced movement speed. Really good damage skill as well. Next ability we have is Green Dragon's Blood. This is here because you are going to need a heal when you're not in werewolf form. It's a very powerful heal. It also gives you Major Fortitude and Major Endurance. So it gives you stamina recovery and health recovery. Now remember, if you're playing by yourself and you're using Dubious Cameron Throne to give yourself stamina, and stamina recovery, this is going to play really well for you because you're going to get both that stamina and health recovery. But in this case, you're just mostly getting the health recovery. And then on top of that, or the healing received, sorry. And on top of that, we do have the Igneous Shield. This is a really powerful thing. It also grants Major Mending when you use it, so it makes the healing from your Green Dragon's Blood a little bit more powerful. Really good. We do have Battle Standard, or Standard of Might here. This is a damage over time. Every second for 20 seconds, that applies Major Defile to the enemy, reducing their healing and health recovery by 30%. And then on top of that, standing in the area increases your damage done and it reduces your damage taken. You don't necessarily use this, but it's here in case you want to use it. Alright, moving on to the back bar. This is where things get really cool. We have Stampede, and Stampede is a great ability because it applies the taunt. It also does AoE damage, and it's just really cool. I love this ability, and especially now with this setup. The next one we have is Noxious Breath, another great ability. Does poison damage up front, poison damage over 14 seconds, and afflicts enemies with Major Fracture, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280. Then we have Carve. This is your way of keeping your Crusher applied. When you activate this, you hit multiple targets, and it'll apply Crusher to every single one of them, just like your Noxious Breath applies Fracture to every single enemy it hits. This does the same, and it will keep that Crusher on them, and it still does damage up front and damage over time. Next is kind of a floater ability, but you can use it or not. It's up to you. I like to use it, so I use Igneous Weapons. This is another great ability because it boosts your weapon and spell damage by 20% for 54 seconds, so it applies to both your physical skills and your spell skills that you might use. Next ability we have is Hardened Armor, great resistance buff. and it gives you a damage shield. It's really great. And also on top of that, it deals magic damage back to the enemies that use a direct damage attack against you. So it's a really nice kind of alternate damage ability with a buff, resistance buff. And then of course, last but not least, we have our pack leader werewolf transformation. Probably the best thing this thing gets. While transformed, your max stamina is increased by 30%, you take 10% less damage, and you summon 2 dire wolves. You also grant yourself and nearby allies minor courage, increasing their weapon and spell damage by 129. While slotted, your stamina recovery is increased by 15%. The nice thing about this is even when you're playing in normal, you can use Dubious Camera Throne when you're not doing tanking or something to give you that really high increased stamina recovery. It's a nice trade-off. Alright, now that I've shown you guys that, let's go ahead and take a jump into our champion points. And this is using my universal CP setup. Just letting you know now. Starting with the red tree, we have 56 in the Ironclad. This increases or reduces the damage you take from direct damage attacks by 20%. Moving on over here to the middle red tree, we have 31 in the thick skin. This reduces damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into Hardy and reduces damage taken by physical, poison, disease damage by 10%, and the same in Elemental Defender, 43, reducing flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%, 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%, and 38 into Heavy Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 30 to 50 while wearing 5 or more pieces of heavy armor. Moving on, we have 40 into Warlord, reducing break free cost by 16%, 16 into Sprinter, reducing cost of sprint by 10%, 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing the cost of bash by 10%, and then of course moving on over here, we have 75 into Tenacity. This increases magic and stamina return of your fully charged heavy attacks by 14%. I did do a lot of testing with stuff since some of the other things, and this does work out a lot better. 43 into Health Recovery. You're using health, heavy armor. Why not take advantage of it? So, increase our health recovery. Moving on, 40 into Tumbling, reducing dodge roll cost by 16%, and 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing the cost of block by 16%. Moving on, one more time to the blue and final trees. 43 into Blast, increasing your healing done by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases light and heavy attack damage of your one-handed and shield, two-handed, dual-wield, bow, and werewolf form by 20%. We also have 40 into Master at Arms, increasing your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. And then moving on to the final tree, 56 into Mighty, increasing physical, poison, disease damage done by 12%. 56 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing of stamina abilities by 20%, and 40 into Thaumaturge, increasing your direct damage done with damage over time effects by 16%. Now, a lot of you probably thought you forgot to show the werewolf skills. I did it on purpose. I wanted to save those until afterwards before I show you it in combat. So with the werewolf, the skills that I would suggest you unlock would be Feral Pounce. Now the reason for Feral Pounce, it deals physical damage, and then activating this ability again within 5 seconds causes the next Feral Charge, or Carnage, causes the next cast to be Feral Carnage, which causes the enemy to bleed for X amount of damage over 10 seconds, and deals up to 450% more damage to enemies under 100% health. Dealing damage with either attack restores 100 stamina and extends the werewolf transformation by 1 second. Then we have Harrison's Fortitude, really great ability. Invoke the blessing, Huntsman's Blessing, healing you for 14,830 health and increasing your health and stamina recovery by 5% of the healing caused for 6 seconds, up to a maximum of 666. This portion of the ability scales off your max health. If you're at full health, you instead restore 3,000 stamina. So this is really good. While slotted, though, you get Major Brutality, increasing your weapon damage by 20%. Great ability. Next ability, Deafening Roar. Roar with a bloodthirst to terrify up to 6 nearby enemies, fearing them for 4 seconds and setting them off balance for 7. Your roar also leaves dazed enemies, applying major fracture and minor maim, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 and damage done by 15% for 10 seconds. While slotted, you gain major savagery, increasing your weapon critical rating by 2191. Next ability we have is Howl of Despair. Crush enemy with a deafening howl, dealing X amount of physical damage. Enemies who are facing you take 10% more damage from this attack. Allies targeting the enemy can activate the Feeding Frenzy synergy, which grants them unlimited uses of Empower for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of their light attacks by 40%. Then last but not least, Claws of Life. Shred your enemies in front of you with claws, dealing X amount of disease damage and X amount of disease damage over 10 seconds. You are healed for 110% of the damage over time caused. Enemies hit by the initial hit are inflicted with the diseased status effect. If you don't know what disease status effect does, is it reduces healing received. And then last but not least, of course, the pack leader, which gives you 2 werewolves. And it also gives you this increased weapon damage. So it's really cool. So it plays really well into the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys at first the build as a tank, or as its normal setup. It's you know, using sword and shield and axe and everything. This way you can kind of get a general idea of how it works like this. And then I'm going to transform into a werewolf, and we're going to take on the boss with that. So as you can see, I had to play earlier to get some ultimate generation, and it's one of the reasons why some of my stuff has been used up already. And here's the cool thing about Stampede, by the way. I didn't know this, but if you watch, ready? Dang it. I'm going to have to do it in the next one. In the next room. So, alright, so you guys saw the Stampede. When you use Stampede and it AoE hits them, what it does is it actually applies that minor, it applies the taunt to all the enemies you hit. It's actually really cool. So let's go ahead and do this now. We're going to go ahead and transform into werewolf. Feral Leap. And this way you guys can see how powerful this is. It is super powerful because you get all this stuff that allows you. And remember when I said this thing gets that 1400 weapon damage even when... So here you can see I'm doing light attacks on this guy. But then when I get him below 25% health, he just eats it because I'm doing so much damage. Because he's taking that 1400 and something extra damage from, or adding that 1400 and something extra weapon damage now to my light and heavy attacks. So it's really powerful. I'm gonna go ahead and munch this guy so when we go into the next room we have some more time on our werewolf. Where you at, sucker? Because I wanna show these guys how you destroy this ugly sucker. Yeah, this thing's that powerful. And with the sturdy, it's really nice because you get all this extra stamina that you can actually do that. Now, you're gonna want a Feral Leap also so you can keep your time of your werewolf form up as much as possible. You know, you don't want to leap too much because you can lose your taunt, but you do want to try and apply it every so many seconds so you can keep that up. And you want to keep that major fracture up as much as possible as well. Not just for yourself, but for your dire wolves and your allies. Oops, I missed with that. Did you see that? Horrible Sherman. And just so you can see the stats as well when you're in Werewolf Farm, it's ridiculously overpowered. So yeah, we have a werewolf tank, you guys. It is awesome. It is. I've been half tempted to do this myself in the live game now because it's so freaking cool to be able to just leap around and just destroy. And he went into hiding, so we're gonna have to die, which sucks. But oh well. Hey, die! I want to die! I want to die! Maybe we should just let him find it, or find him real quick so he can do that. There he goes. Now we're out of werewolf form anyways. Come on, kill me. Ow. Alright. So that's pretty much it for this build, guys. You know, I can't say this enough about any of my builds, but I love playing a lot of this stuff, and I love sharing it with you guys. So, I did mention in the last part I was going to talk about the things about the character. One of the things I am going to mention real quick, the skills. When you see me, the skills that I suggest you unlock, those are just suggestions. I didn't do it this time because I wanted to show some other stuff and explain some other stuff. But if you wanted to know what skills I have unlocked, I do have Standard of Might, I have Molten Whip, Venomous Claw, Noxious Breath, Unrelenting Grip, Flames of Oblivion. On the Draconic power side, I have Take Flight, Hardened Armor, Talons, Green Dragon's Blood, Protective Plate, Deep Breath, and then on the Earth and Heart we have Corrosive Armor, Stone Giant, Igneous Weapons, Igneous Shield, Fossilized, and Cinder Storm, and that's the heal one. So that's a good one. Two-handed, Berserker's Rage, Wrecking Blow, Stampede, Carve, Executioners, and Rally. And then of course moving on to the Sword and Shield, we have Shield Discipline, Pierce Armor, Deep Slash, Defensive Stance, Invasion, not the one that gives you the shield because you already get enough shields as a Dragonknight, and then Power Slam. Armor, Heavy Armor, Unstoppable Brute's just a good one overall. And then over here in Soul Magic, we do have the Soul Assault and Consuming Trap. I've already shown you the werewolf stuff. I'm going to skip that so we can get to the rest of this. Fighters Guild, Ultimate Dawn, or Flawless Dawnbreaker, Silver Shards, Ring of Preservation, Camouflage Hunter, and Barb Trap. Mages Guild, we have the Ice Comet, Inner Light, Structured Entropy, Volcanic Ruin, and Balance. Psijic Order, Temporal Guard, Borrowed Time, Crushing Weapon, Race Against Time, Min Spirit, Introspection, and then on Undaunted, Sanguine Altar, Tangled Webs, Inner Beast, Spike Bone Shield, Mystic Orb, and then of course moving on to Assault Skills, Aggressive Horn, Echoing Vigor, Caltrops, and then or the support side of the Alliance War, we have Replenishing Barrier, Effective Purge, and Stalwart Guard. And then of course being a Nord is really helpful. You get that 15% increase in two-handed damage, the drink consumption time increase, you get max health and cold resistance and chilled status effect, immunity, you get max stamina, and you get ultimate Jin whenever you take damage, which is also good for the werewolf. You have rugged health, which increases both physical and spell resistance, making you hardier. And then of course we do have the alchemy, medicinal use, and the provisioning, gourmand and connoisseur. Alright, so now that I've just done that, I'm going to explain a little bit more. Now, if you want to leave right now, you can. This pretty much is the end of the video, but I do want to kind of explain a few more things. So, besides skills that you have access to, the gear and everything else, please understand that these builds are just templates for you to use. That means they are not set in stone. They are not here to be a required play. you have the ability to choose what skills you use, how you use those skills, what tools you use, including sets, traits, enchants, and Mundus Stone. You do not have to use the same ones I am using. You can use the ones you want. But it is a very, very powerful setup when you min-max to its fullest potential. And that's really what I try to do, is to min-max the build to bring you something that's at its fullest potential. Another thing is that when you see me pick a certain race, like a Nord over a Redguard or something like that, it's really player preference, and it's really on the concept of your idea of what you want your character to be. So race really only applies to some of the build. There's even more to it than that you can do to give you a more flexible play style or whatever. That's the idea of this build, is to be flexible, allow you a lot of freedom. But you can also take this idea of the Werewolf Hunter and put it into light armor, medium armor. There's so many options. It's not even funny, and it's really cool. I did mess around a little bit with the light armor setup, and was like, maybe I should release it like that. People might like it. It's really, really fun, because it was. I mean, I have fun with playing around with builds anyways, but that was really cool. But that's it for the video, guys. I hope you guys liked it. I hope that was a little bit more understanding. If there's anything about the routine of my video layouts that you would like me to change, or might be better explain, better have a thing of explaining, and don't ask me to timestamp it, because it takes a long time for me to go through and watch the video, timestamp it as I'm doing so, uploading. Plus I have a normal life outside of doing this that I have to, kind of maintain. So it can be really challenging for me to timestamp stuff, and it's not so challenging me for do write-ups, but doing the write-up in the description is a lot of information. I did try it in the past. It doesn't really work. I do want to get a website. I really do, and that's my next goal. So if you guys are wondering what my next goal is for this channel, it's to get a website so I can have written guides, so I can have that kind of stuff for you guys right there for every build I release. Oh yeah, it'll be cool. So, but that's pretty much it. Again, I want to thank you all. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy will see you in game. Bye.